Today I'll be reviewing Aces of Thunder, and the developers have kindly sponsored today's video, but in no way does it affect my judgment. And this sponsorship is only to ensure I add some info, like even though it's been made with VR in mind first, it's also playable on a flat screen. The game is releasing tomorrow, February 3rd, for PSVR2 and PCVR, and the last thing I have to include is store links for both platforms, which you'll find in this video's description. With that out of the way, let's get into the review. I've been playing Aces of Thunder on PCVR via Steam for about 6 months, so I've pretty much spent the whole weekend in the PSVR2 version. And when it comes to the PC version, even though the developers have done a lot of updates in terms of visuals and performance, I do still feel there are things on both platforms that need to be addressed, and I'll talk about those nearer the end of the video. So bear with me because there's quite a bit to go over, but let's get the important stuff out of the way first. In terms of graphics, everything is almost identical regardless if you play on PCVR or PSVR2, but the PC version does edge in front ever so slightly due to having graphical options, and the effects these graphical options will have will clearly depend on your PC. I played using a 5070 Ti, but here's the recommended PC specs in case you're wondering if your PC is good enough. And the biggest difference between PC and PSVR2, and when I say the biggest, it's really the only thing, and that's the look of volumetric clouds, especially when the sky is full of them and you're at sea, which means the whole sky is again being reflected. On PSVR2, when this happens, they get a sort of shimmery bubbly effect, especially further away. And yes, these clouds are real and they can be flown through and above, and regardless of what system you play it on, when you do this it looks amazing. For everything else though, I think Aces of Thunder is exactly the same and is a truly stunning game in VR. And after months, if not years, of not knowing if the developers were going to underdeliver on the PSVR2 version, for me right now this sits as one of the top looking games on the system. It runs at a pretty solid 90Hz native refresh rate with only minor stutters here and there. There is no PS5 Pro support, as Aces of Thunder is very CPU based. We have headset rumble and plenty of haptics in the controllers, but there is no adaptive triggers, and to be honest, I didn't miss them. The game will be priced at $30, and this gives you 20 or so planes, but they've also told me there's a deluxe version, and this will cost $50. Now what I don't know is if you can simply buy the planes individually. I want to assume this will be the case. There is daily challenges to unlock cosmetics and paint, which seems to be all focused with playing online, which I could only test using the Steam version, and if you don't like one or two of these challenges, you can re-roll them to get a different challenge. You can play Aces of Thunder with a HOTAS or 6-off controls using Sense controllers or touch controllers in the case of Quest, and while doing this you can still use the joysticks versus having to hold the virtual plane's control stick. And I think some people will actually like this because if you're using 6-off you can still interact with the cockpit, mess around with certain bits and bobs, but then you can still use the joysticks versus having to hold your hand in front of you for long periods of time. And lastly, you can also use a controller like your DualSense controller on PS5 for example. You can create your own battle scenarios for solo play or go online with up to 30 players. And when you're in these battles it does look pretty incredible seeing all the bullet tracers filling up the sky. There's different weather conditions, time of day, tons of locations, and there's set story missions which probably won't take you that long to get through once you've mastered flying. And after playing this game for quite a few hours, it does still get the better of me. I've said it before in other videos and I'll say it again, this is one of the hardest flying sims I've ever played. If you go into a maneuver too hard, you could start blacking out, and this will cause you to temporarily lose control of the plane if you're not quick enough to compensate for the stress your body is under, or you'll even see blood rush to your head. And the reason this game is sometimes so hard to control is due to the wind. You'll see your wings regularly bouncing up and down under stress, and the controls, especially when using 6-off controls, are so precise in some of the smaller planes it can be extremely easy to get yourself into a tailspin, and then it's obviously pretty much game over. But with all that being said, that's why I like it. You kind of have to earn your wings in this game, and the planes feel extremely different to fly, and I think this is where the depth of the game shines because it's actually pretty hard to master, but while saying that, it's also pretty rewarding. So I want to be clear because some people were asking if this game was like Ultra Wings or other games in VR. This is not an arcade sim. It's pretty serious and I think it's all the better for it, and before I forget, the sound work in this game is absolutely glorious. Hearing your plane's hull creak under pressure or your engine starting to hiss, letting you know you have to pay attention to your engine's temperature, and then there's just so many ways it can quickly be game over. But luckily, if you fly in a squadron, if you go down or lose control of your plane, you will automatically then take control of another plane in that squadron, giving you another shot to complete the mission. On some missions you get to use all the planes in your squadron, or you'll only get 3, and once all 3 of those planes are done, it's a full restart. The planes themselves are insanely detailed inside and out, and for those of you who watched my PSVR2 live stream yesterday, the textures on the plane are now fully loading in and they look excellent. Now onto the things I don't like and I hope get addressed. There is no grip toggle, so currently if you grab something using grip, it will be permanently attached to your hand until you toggle the grip button again. I've mentioned this in previous videos, simply hoping the developers would pick up on it, but sadly that still hasn't been the case. Also, it's very hard to tell friend from foe, and a lot of the time it's pure guesswork right up until the point you're about to shoot them. And then there's the ground targets, like tanks for example. These can be insanely difficult to take out. So for me, I would have loved to have the option to have the enemies highlighted by the HUD in red, but that simply isn't the case. You only ever see blue, which lets you know who your friends are, but this system doesn't feel that reliable because when you do look at them, sometimes they are highlighted in blue and sometimes they aren't. Dropping bombs is very dependent on practice and working out your own timings via your altitude. This is a pretty hardcore VR sim, but I think it's a very good one. In combat, getting shot can lead to so many different outcomes depending on where you get shot. I've been instantly killed, so I'm assuming I was shot in the head, or your plane will hobble along nicely, but you'll soon find out sometimes it's just better to parachute out and do another run with a fresh plane. There is also still some awkward blackout moments, which I'm assuming wouldn't be that bothersome for someone playing on a flat screen, but in VR players can be left in the dark not knowing what's going on, and in some missions, if you miss a torpedo as an example, you'll suddenly be auto switched to another plane, which is a bit jarring. As for motion sickness, luckily this game is a solid performer, but I think for people who do get a little bit sick in VR, it will greatly depend on how much visibility the cockpit of your plane you're flying allows. The more cockpit you have in front of you, the less motion sickness you'll probably feel, because when you're in a nice open one and you look up and around, you'll probably feel like you're doing 300 miles an hour at 6,000 feet and you're floating through the sky. But there is nice effects like scratches on the cockpit glass that help remind you you are in fact inside a plane. And before I forget, the light and shadows in this game look absolutely stunning. I'm constantly dazzled by this game, especially when you see the sun come out from behind the clouds and go back in again. Going back to the combat quickly, I just want to add that shooting someone down in Aces of Thunder is a truly fantastic and satisfying experience. Not only because the damage you're doing will cause unpredictable effects on your target, like you'll see their wings fly off, or the plane could literally rip in half, or their engines could be spilling smoke and oil that goes all over your cockpit, which I think is a really nice touch. But the real reason it feels so amazing to shoot someone down in this game is because you've earned it, because it can take a great deal of concentration to nail someone, but when you do, it just feels absolutely brilliant. So overall, I give Aces of Thunder a massive buy recommendation, especially for those of you who are looking for a deep VR flying sim. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I look forward to playing with you guys online later on today. Remember to like and subscribe for more VR content, and I'll see you on the next one.
Victory! Yamato is breaking up and sinking. Outstanding job, team.